Good morning, Brian back again. It's the Art of Startup War. Again, we are on with a phenomenal entrepreneur, one that we have invested in. Oh yes, an incredible company. But really, if everything is timing and everything is about the space, today we are going to talk about the future of the most important thing in work, which is employees, right? And how their future actually looks and how do you manage that future and make sure that it is as perfect as it can possibly be. Well, this particular company that we've recently put an investment into are totally specialized on one thing and one thing only, and that is making employees the very best that they can possibly be through self-discovery and self-growth. And it's a phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal company that allows for the companies and the employees and the ecosystem and everything to come together in one place where everybody's focused on one thing, and that's the betterment of the employee. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So pretty much 90% of folks who are listening to this show are folks who are either investors or they are future investors or potential investors in the company. And what they're trying to get to is this a good fit for me? They all know it's a good fit for Brian because I've already put money into it, but is it a good fit for them? So I try and cover as many things as we can that will kind of touch all of those investor pain points or pleasure points of how can we see and feel that this company is going to go to the stratosphere? How do we know that it's going to become a unicorn? They all know that timing is involved in that and team is involved in that and growth is involved in that and all those wonderful things. So we're going to touch it all and we're going to do it. Sound good?
Sounds great.
So let's start with Lighthouse itself. And before even we come to how it came about, like what is it and how is it helping employees?
Yeah, so I think the best way to describe the lighthouse is through an analogy. So the analogy, we've gone through many iterations of this because when you're building something brand new, it's hard to compare it to something that exists. But the one that I think is most accurate to our vision is really what we describe as we're building the Waze for your career. And there is a very distinct reason why I said Waze and not Google Maps.
I know, and I like that. I like that because Waze is awesome and it takes you down all those back roads while Google Maps will just put you on the freeway. And we all know the freeway is never the fastest way. But sorry,
You're
go
more,
on.
yeah, 100%. You're more in control with Waze. You are really driving your own path, but you have access to information that's sourced not only by a central source of truth, but also by a source of truth that's really crowdsourced by other drivers that are on the road with you. And so that's really what we're building at the Lighthouse. And I'll go deeper into the story, but we really recognize that when it came to the solutions and the tools that people are using when it comes to navigating their career, there aren't great ones that exist today. And the most common solutions are a combination of Google, calling a parent, calling a partner, going on to LinkedIn and reaching out cold. And there's this great data point from LinkedIn that found that 77% of people feel alone when it comes to managing their career. And so that's really the problem that we're looking to solve at the Lighthouse, and doing so in a way that is as personalized and as dynamic as today's career paths are.
And you're right. And right now, folks may feel that in some ways they crowdsource some of the information. Sister sourced and cousin sourced is not crowdsourced, okay? Especially when your sister and your cousin have got like zero expertise whatsoever. They have worse than expertise. They have bias. What creates a wonderful decision-making process is when you can see all the different perspectives, all the point of views, and you get them brought into one place, which is a place where only expertise matters. So I love how you've pulled all, I actually love the name. I think the name is like coolest name. Next time TechCrunch are coming out with their best name, like you got to have Lighthouse there because you just have this image of this light, these seas, which are frothy and crazy and ships being smashed everywhere. And then there's this beautiful light, which is just going around in a 360, which is saying to everybody, we got you. You just got to come here and we'll make sure that you don't hit the rocks, that you make it to shore safely.
100%. It's all about better navigation and empowering you with the tools and the information to better navigate your career. And I think the lighthouse analogy, to your point, it was actually my sister's idea, who's an artist and a lot more visual than I am. And when I was describing to her what I was trying to build in the very, very early days, she was like, oh, it's like a lighthouse helping to help people better navigate their careers. And I was like, that's it. That's the name.
I was going to ask, I never ask about the names, but I love your name in particular. I was going to ask, like, was it something that you went through and you worked through and you put analysis behind it? Or was it like the Silicon Valley where you go out into the middle of the desert with mind hallucinating mushrooms to come up with the best name ever? But it was your sister. But yeah, so it's an awesome name, and it's epically aligned with what you're doing for people. So take me all the way back to the beginning when you're putting this thing together, because one thing is saying we are going to create the live wiki, the live Waze for entire employment navigation going forward. But it is a monster to build, a monster. So where do you even begin with that? So take me back to the start. You have the idea, you come up with a name, you know you want to build that. Like, I know you had a massively high level job where you were on your way to doing, $500,000 a year, $1 million a year, and you were literally on the fast track to doing that. And you decided you were going to do this. So take me through that journey a little bit.
Yeah, so I joke that I'm one of the few founders that I know that actually was really excited about my career path before leaving it to start the Lighthouse. But ultimately, I just saw a much bigger opportunity and just could not get it out of my head. It was very much that. So my background before starting the company, I worked in management consulting. I worked for PwC out of their New York office. Did that for 2 years, but essentially the entire time was just trying to get moved to China. And that was because I speak Mandarin and just really wanted to work there full time. I was fascinated by the business landscape, the culture, the people, the history, everything. And so I joined the Shanghai office, and it aligned with, basically I was on the team of 5 people building up their digital strategy and innovation consulting practice in mainland China. I did that for 3 years, and over the course of that time, we built it up to be the second largest business from a revenue standpoint in the country, and got to work. My first project was with Apple, and my last one was with Alibaba. So it was just a dream, incredible experience. But ultimately, I was really frustrated in navigating my own career. I was just shocked that when it came down to getting career questions answered, getting advice, I found myself still cobbling together advice from calling my mom and my sister, who in my case, I'm lucky that they're both working professionals, but not at all in my field, not working in geography, had very little context on the work I was doing, or going onto Google and just being overwhelmed by the amount of information, and also recognizing that most of it was written by content marketers that were plugging different solutions and products rather than actually sharing firsthand experience on what worked for them. Or this new habit that I'm a huge fan of, which is going onto LinkedIn, trying to figure out who might have the insight you're looking for, reaching out cold, hoping they respond, and then hoping you get 20 minutes of their time on the insight that you need that information on. And I was just shocked that these were my go-to solutions, and I could just feel that it wasn't cutting it. And so I started just surveying my friends and my colleagues and seeing, like, what are you doing? What am I missing? And I was both relieved and also very inspired to find that their solutions were the same as mine. It was this kind of cobbled together, hacked together solution. And it became really obvious that we needed better, smarter ways to navigate our careers. And as a consultant, I obviously looked at, okay, what are the macro trends at play here? And just became fascinated with the fact that my experience, my colleagues and my friends' experience just mimicked this larger trend, which was the fact that the traditional career ladder does not exist anymore, and it's quickly eroding. And what that means is that there's no set path to follow anymore. You really have to carve your own. But that is a very difficult thing to do without better, smarter resources to help you do that. And so that's really the gap that we're trying to fill at the Lighthouse.
So the idea of it, I think every single person out there is going to agree with, no matter age, experience, or where they're from. But how did you go about starting it? So you woke up that morning, that fateful morning where you said, I am now going to leave my job and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to reverse this awesome salary, awesome job, living the dream life to build something which the world desperately needs. How challenging was that? And let's, before we get into the hero journey when everything is going phenomenal, which it is right now, take me through those early days of doubt and desperation and spending money rather than receiving money and trying to build something which is just so enormous. I don't even know where you start.
Yeah, well, I think that the the best founders are risk, people think about founders as being super, loving risk, but I think the best founders are actually really smart about the way that they approach risk. And I think that I tried to apply some of that in my own decision-making process around this. So really I was baffled by the problem I was facing, seeing my friends, my colleagues, my peers face. And then I kind of came up with this idea, and it was, okay, there's this new habit that we have, which is we're going onto LinkedIn. That to me shows that what people are really craving is career insight that is personalized, because when you have a one-on-one conversation, you can get it more tailored to what you actually need. And they're craving insight that is rooted in real up-to-date experience, because when we're doing this cold outreach on LinkedIn, the people we're targeting are people who are a little bit further ahead of us, but they have the experience that we're now looking to gain. And so I was like, well, what if you created a platform that just made it easier to do that? Because that's what people are really craving. And so the kind of, I'll backtrack to say that, like, I worked on the Lighthouse for 6 months before quitting my job. And there was actually one moment where I was deciding, I was kind of at an inflection point myself of deciding, do I stay in at my company, or do I go get an MBA? And I remember sitting in on a class at Stanford, and it was a class on entrepreneurship. And I don't even remember who the professor was, but I'm sure he was an incredible figure who I'm probably reading a ton of his work now. And I was in the back of the class, and I found myself just completely not listening to what he was saying, but instead writing down ideas around the Lighthouse. And that made it super clear to me that my energy was in building rather than the more formal learning experience. And so that's what really gave me the confidence to go and build it. And also I led this like proof of concept over the Christmas holidays when I wasn't working for my full-time job, where we got our first paying customers. We validated a lot of the boldest assumptions around the Lighthouse. And that really gave me the confidence to go out and do it full time.
I love that. And then how did you work on the development? So you're obviously a phenomenal strategist. That's your world, that's your space, that's where you came from. Easy peasy for you. But then you have to translate that incredible vision into online development, user experience. How did you do that?
Yeah, so I think that this is just a really good thing for any person to know, whether you're an investor and you're looking to make smart investments into companies, or you're a person who's looking to build something yourself. There is so much third-party software that getting a CTO or learning how to code yourself should never be the thing that stops you from getting something out into the world. And so probably for the first year of the Lighthouse was a hacked together solution of Typeform plus a Wix website plus Google Docs. Then we got fancier Zapier integrations. Like, it was very much, we built something, and people are paying for this. I think that's the beautiful thing, that you can actually, and now as a founder, you see, if you start looking at the URLs, many companies, the most established companies, are using third-party software constantly in their user flow. And so think of what you're looking to build, think of what you're looking to validate, and then find the tools that you can actually use to build it. And that's what we did. And that meant that the first year of our growth was a lot of validating our boldest hypotheses, and it was doing so on my savings with me as a one-man show and just kind of bringing in people where I needed. And then it was once we knew what it should look like, and when we were doing the matching at a scale that we needed more automation, that we actually went out to go recruit Dimitri, who is now a core part of the Lighthouse, who's built everything from back-end architecture to front-end builds. And I think that like, he has been an incredible addition to the team in terms of how we have scaled what we've built. But in the very first days, it's all about figuring out what you should even be building. And third-party software allowed us to do that in a very, very capital efficient way.
And it just speaks to your execution power as well. Like, if we say that having a phenomenal product fit, which is beautifully executed, and then having, the vision to be able to build something is really important, and then the development shops to be able to make sure that it's done properly when it really gets out to market, like, all of those things are really important. And maybe we'll just layer in timing in there as well, especially, and we're going to actually talk more about timing, because I think the timing of this market is so frigging perfect. It's off the charts. But really, the beginning part of it just speaks to your execution power. The fact that you had decided that rather than just talk about this, rather than just, have conversations with people, bring them in, hypothesize, you had decided it was going to get built. And then you were going to do something beautiful, which is that you were going to test it with paying clients. And you never, ever see that. But what it gives you is it gives you an undeniable truth. And what it shows is that it's a little bit like, I call it the repressed Catholic Irish factor, right? Which is that we go to confession before we even commit a sin. So you're so wary about losing investors' money, our partners' time, or bringing people on, that you wanted to make sure that everything was absolutely perfect before you brought them in, which is again highly, highly unusual. Was that intentional, or was that the way things just panned out because of your personality and way of being?
I think that I mean, this is really recognizing it now that we're fundraising for institutional capital in a much bigger round, where I can now reflect on so much of what we've done and how it actually signals really well to investors about how we will be very conscious about how we deploy their capital. So I think part of it is probably a little bit my upbringing, just how I was raised to think about money, and that it, is this very valuable resource that you should use deliberately and intentionally. But I also think that part of it was the founder mindset that's so important, which is testing before growing to this massive scale. You need to make sure that it's right. And I think especially with a product like the Lighthouse, it is not a copycat product. It is brand new. It is something that doesn't exist today, and it's something that I strongly believe needed to be built live out in the market. This is not an R&D company where you can kind of go back, research the trends, launch something and think it'll be perfect. So much of how we've been building is a very iterative, reacting to our users, our customers. And I think that's exactly how this type of business needs to be built, because the requirements are constantly evolving and changing. COVID has shifted certain things. And it's almost like you need to be constantly getting reactions to ideas rather than asking your customer what they want. I mean, it's a little cheesy, but I would truly think that it was something that's truly innovative. It is the Steve Jobs quote of, they might not know what they want. The problem you're solving, and focus entirely on that. And then, bring ideas and concepts to life and see how they respond to that. And I think that that's made our product evolution very, very user-centric. And I think it will lead us to really be the best solution in this space, because we focus so much on what people actually needed and wanted.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind. And I want to get to the product in a second, but let's touch timing for a second. So we're in this amazing time. Like really, if they're in the last 40 years and the next 40 years, if there was a perfect time to build this product, it's right now today. Because an entire generation of people are desperately looking for guidance about what to do. Jobs have suddenly become really confusing. They were never confusing before. Like you were an accountant, you were a doctor, you were a dentist, maybe you're a sales guy or a sales girl. Like you had these like very narrowly defined roles that you went into, and it took you down a journey. And then it was cool because you didn't really need to think for 15 or 20 years, because you just like sat there. And then every 4 years you get promoted because they recognize they have to do something to make sure just that they just recognize that you're alive, right? And so that was it. And now we've moved like unbelievably quickly into this new paradigm where actually an average career in one place is 2 years, right? And it's almost seen as necessary for people to be going. I see it as within jobs, people doing what venture capital does for businesses, right? Venture capital is like a Sunday afternoon meal that's turned into a microwave meal, right? You just get it done really fast. You could be a unicorn in 5 years, not 25 years. And in jobs, it's almost like an entire generation of people have realized, if I follow that path that Brian just said, it's going to take me 25 years to be the CEO of a firm or to be the head of whatever I'm going to be. Well, I can get there in 8 years if I follow this jumping path. The problem with the jumping path is like jumping on stones that are kind of visible in a pond to cross the pond. You never know which ones are actual stones and which ones are going to crumble into the water as you go through. So that, combined with the fact that COVID has thrown the world for a loop, just seems to me that the timing is off the charts for this.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think paradigm shift it captures the scale at which this is really changing. And I think that it's driven by three different factors. There's the actual market itself, which ultimately companies, the career ladders that they built don't last anymore, right? You're seeing the structure of companies completely shift through digital transformation, and even the makeup of teams and the kind of people that they need. All of a sudden you have brand new roles like UX, UI, and digital marketing and growth hacking, like all of these brand new needs that are coming out of how the market has evolved and changed, and how industries are constantly changing. And that's not going to stop. It's only going to accelerate. And there's this great data point from a Dell report, and it says that 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 don't even exist today. Wow. And so that just speaks to the market shift. And then there's the individual shift, which is the customer shift in the way that we've even thought about our careers. And that's also driven just by the individual and our values. So there's a lot of talk around millennials and Gen Z wanting more purpose and wanting more flexibility. And so the things that the employee base is actually wanting is also shifting. And then, and COVID completely accelerated this, there's a third dynamic at play, which is the way that we actually work. So the way that those two groups come together, and that is going through complete transformation. And so there's just so much change. It's only accelerating, and it just is making the gap that we're trying to fill just consistently grow. And so we're just trying to make sure that we can stay ahead of it, so people can feel really empowered, and so companies can make their employees successful, so to in turn make their companies successful in this world of massive, rapid transformation.
And what's wonderful is we've started to see organizations paying the subscriptions for the members to actually be on the platform, which I think speaks volumes, because there's nobody in the world would ever doubt that employees want to have the very best access to advice so they can make the right decisions, so they can get where they want to get to faster, right? That's a no-brainer. But what's hyper interesting is the organizations who may have been worried 10, 15 years ago that too much information would actually force an employee to leave earlier and they might lose them. And they've moved to a place of actually the more information you give, the more loyalty you get from your employment workforce, which means that you should actually give them everything. And if you do, they'll stay longer.
100%. I think that it's a very old school. There's this very old school mindset, which takes a very paternalistic view to employees as if they're children and you need to, protect and hide them from the world. And they're not. They're adults just like you, and they should be empowered in their decision-making process. And the more that you try to hold that back, the less loyal and committed to you and the organization they will be. And I think that there's two things that we're often quoting when it comes to this topic is, one, a Richard Branson quote where he says, the question is, what if I invest in my employees and they leave? And the only alternative to that is, what if you invest in them and they stay? What's the upside of that? And then secondly, the fact that, and Josh Bersin, who's a massive industry leader, has a ton of reports and data that shows that lack of career development has become the primary reason people are leaving jobs today. And so companies talk about the cost of attrition and all of that, but they're not addressing the number one reason they're seeing people leave in terms of their exit interviews and engagement survey data. And I think it speaks to this constant shift. And what that means is that the key to success for every player is you have the individual and their goals and how they want to grow as an individual. And then you have the company and how the company needs to evolve and grow as a company based on market and industry trends. And I think the key is really, how do you constantly realign those two things so that the right person is in the right opportunity, because that ultimately is the sweet spot for every stakeholder in this matrix.
I agree. And then, so if we take it where you go next, you've already proven it out. You've already built the platform. You've got a phenomenal team, great CTO in there. You've raised money already. And now you're going on a major raise to turn this into something the like of which the world has never seen. So speak a little bit to that vision, and also about the further raises that you're going to be able to do to make sure that you accomplish that vision.
Yeah. So the kind of earliest proof of concept to the Lighthouse was, okay, how do we deliver personalized and experience-based career advice? And so the first iteration of that was building a platform where we leveraged AI so that an individual would come in, share their goals, and then we would match them with other professionals who had that firsthand experience for these one-to-one conversations. What we've done through growing that business is validated a lot of how the solution needs to be built. And also we've built up this massive data set on, one, what are the top career development areas that individuals are actually focusing on? And then two, what is the support that they need to actually bring those to life? And we've done a ton of analysis on hundreds of these one-on-one career conversations and found that every conversation falls into three separate categories, or three separate sections. One is, what are the actionable steps I can take to get closer to my goal? Two, what are the resources that will help me get there? So that could be a book, it could be a course, it could be a podcast, it could be a frame of thinking or a framework to use. And then three, what are some lessons learned and best practices that will help me be smarter about this? And what we have validated and brought to life in a way that we're super excited about is basically a way to deliver that exact insight in a more product-led way. And really what it's doing, I think, is it's combining the same real world insights you would get if you were talking to a mentor in the space, coupling that with the guidance, structure, and accountability you would get from a career coach, and then delivering that personalized experience that you'd get from one conversation, but through technology. And we're super excited about that, because what we see in the space is there's a lot happening, but a lot of it is based on delivery of insight through people, whether it's career coaching platforms or mentorship platforms. And we're doing it through product, which we believe the scalability of that is so immense that it means that we can hit and touch a much wider part of the workforce, and we can actually replicate our model across every part of the workforce. So whether that's different industries, different functions, different types of workers, a full-time employee versus a gig economy worker, different geographies, and that the repeatability that we've uncovered through this more product-led personalized career delivery is just something we're very, very excited about. And we feel like it's the complete missing mark, because it means that we can expand beyond the senior level folks working in a tech company who are getting access to a ton of benefits, and actually hit the massive workforce that is so underserved and so in need of these solutions. And that's something that we're super excited about.
Great. And then, so what does the timeline look like for you to continue building the product to get to that perfect place? And how much money are you raising to do that?
Yes. So we're raising a 1 million pre-seed round. And in terms of the timeline, so we're building that version of the product right now. And we've actually been able to already secure paying partnerships with our current clients that are expanding this product to a broader part of their employee population. So that will be live in January of 2021.
Amazing.
2022.
Yeah, amazing. Within 3 months. So it shows how fast you're iterating here.
And it also shows the proprietary data and insight that we have access to that allows us to bring it to life with speed. We are by no means starting from scratch. It's basically repurposing insight and data that we already have access to. And so from there, we are on track to launch with some of our biggest partners who are massive employers, some of the leading brands in the employer space in Q1 of 2022. And then from there, we'll open up to a B2C audience. And what that kind of speaks to is we were talking a little bit at the beginning about go to market and how we see the world of work evolving. And we really consider ourselves a future of work company. And that means that our vision is to service and empower the evolving workforce. And today, the majority of that workforce still do work for companies. So we really believe that's our wedge in. However, we're already seeing that that's starting to change. And regardless of how bullish you are on the rise of the gig economy and what percentage of the workforce that will make up, there is undoubtedly this shift where individual professionals are taking more ownership over their own careers. And we think that trend will only continue. And so really this thesis informs our go-to-market, which is taking a similar approach to what lynda.com, now LinkedIn Learning took, General Assembly, which is having two pathways for growth, where there's the companies that are sponsoring subscriptions for their employees, as well as having a product-led channel open for individuals to opt in and sponsor it for themselves. And so we really see kind of the B2B as a way to develop a relationship with the end user, who is ultimately who we're building for.
Fantastic. And as all the every investor listening here is going to entirely agree that this is a very logical way to be able to build within an area that's like hyper popular right now. No question there. Everybody's also going to agree that as a founding team, it's an incredible founding team, right? We've got supreme experience. within development, extreme experience within consultancy, and vision and strategy exactly the same. Everybody's going to be great with that as well. Everybody's also going to be very comfortable with the early validation and the fact that large corporations, I can't say who it is, but one of the biggest companies in America is already paying a lot of money to make sure that their employees are well taken care of, and they're thinking future backwards, which is phenomenal. They're seeing the end vision and they're making sure that they bring their companies there. So all of that is going to be really clear. So the only things that remain is, number one, to talk a little bit about the traction and where we're going to and how that's going to grow and what those projections look like. And then we're going to finish up with a question I always love to ask, which is that all of these investors who are listening are saying, okay, I'm going to put my trust in you. You're going to be the one. I'm going to take my hard-earned money and I'm going to put it in here because I believe this is going to get me a 20, 50, 100 times return because I'm coming in early and because I really believe in where the company is going to go to. And you're going to speak to that point and get that across at the end. But before we get there, let's do the traction. Let's talk about the numbers. Let's talk about how you grow and how we get you from this $1 million round that you're doing right now through to your Series A, which is going to be next year, I'm sure. And then how do you get beyond that to Series B and Series C?
Yeah, so we are on track. We're currently at 10K in MRR, and we're on track to hit 50 by early 2022, and then round out the year at $1 million in ARR. So we have a very clear path. And actually, what I love to see in the projections is there's multiple pathways to get there, using the channels that we've already been able to prove to drive some of those companies that you were kind of, mentioning without mentioning to date. And so it's basically doubling down on the channels that we've already proven. And then also something that's just very inherent to the Lighthouse as a product is there's already network effects that we're seeing within the spreading of the solution. So some examples of that is an individual getting access to Lighthouse, attending an event, and then bringing us to their company. Or an individual getting access because they work for company X and then they leave that company and want to bring it to their next company, company Y. Or there is sharing, they're working towards their goals on the Lighthouse and they want to share that with their manager within the company or share with their mentors outside of the company. And so there's all of this sharing that's already happening in a very, in a way that has a lot of friction to it ultimately. And so right now we're building product and features around that to ultimately enable and remove the friction from a lot of those natural kind of network effect driven growth elements that we're already starting to see. So we're super excited about that and think that that will ultimately make up the lion's share of our growth once we've really refined what are the user flows that make that as seamless as possible. So that's a little bit about traction.
Oh, and just
what was the second question?
Before we get to the second point, yeah. So on traction, I think there's the money and the revenue is interesting. When you talk about annual recurring revenue, ARR, then, I see how that's going to grow up. It's a no-brainer. But I think it's almost equally interesting, the stickiness and the engagement of consumers on your platform in general. Because look, we know it's some of the largest and the fastest growing companies in the world. Like take LinkedIn, for example, who bought lynda.com, right? LinkedIn didn't even start thinking of revenue until goodness knows how late they were in their trajectory because they understood the power of ownership. They now own the entire business community for the United States and maybe for the whole world because how they focused on that. And I just see consumers coming into your platform, using it, finding it, using some of the not paid for freemium services that they can get into, and then just continually coming back in there. How do you see that growing? And do you agree that that could be a huge portion of it?
100%. And I think we're facilitating that in the way that we're developing the product, but we're already seeing that naturally happen. And I think that that's one of in our B2B partnerships, 50% of our accounts expanded in under a year since launching. And I think that quick timeline to grow and to expand the account really came from the incredible feedback that they were getting from their employees who are our end users. And that came from two things. One is just superiority of the product. And I think that we quote this, and it's the Lighthouse has an NPS that's 4 times higher than traditional existing solutions. I would say that that's not hard to beat because there just is when you look at the existing solutions, they aren't solutions that exist. They aren't the intranets that employees have access to. They're these hacked together solutions that they're ultimately using. And so the fact that we're making growth easier so that the person can just focus on that and not focus on figuring out where to even begin when it comes to growth, I think is massive. And then in terms of consistent engagement, that's been a majority of our focus for the past 6 months. And we've been able to, I don't know, but at least 3x our engagement in terms of monthly consistent engagement, just by focusing on different features that will enable that and uncover a lot of those different things, whether it's setting timelines around goals or signing up for nudges, or when someone reaches a goal, if they make a successful transition or if they successfully advocate for that promotion, then what are the goals that other members are setting next? And then putting that in front of the person because we have that data. And so those are a lot of the features that we've been investing in, and there's still so much more that we still have to bring to life in that realm. But we're already seeing it pay off in terms of supporting people in this lifelong journey of career development and career growth.
Yeah, I love this. And for all investors listening, only thing you're really betting on here is if you believe that this company are going to win. If you do, the sector that they're in is everything. It's everything. Like if they own employees, they own everything. They own job searches in the future. They own development in the future. They own everything that an employee needs as they're going to grow. They own all of the services that are going to tie into this. Like I do not have words to describe how large this company, you forget Indeed.com, forget LinkedIn and what they're doing, like forget everything. This is taking the companies, the employees at their roots and getting them at the time when they are the most loyal and the most grateful. So I love that. So we're going to finish up by just speaking to your execution power. And you alluded to it a little bit at the beginning when you talked about what drives you and you talked about how you got the product to market. And we saw that you managed to get large corporations paying before you even had the full platform in place. You talked about it and how you brought your team on. And you also spoke a little bit to your execution in the previous roles you had, which are all unbelievably high level and they're all about execution. But now you're speaking just specifically to all of the investors who are listening to this and saying, I want to make a great investment. How do I know that this is going to execute all of the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's belief in the world of work and how it's going to change. And number one, if you believe in any of the things that I said around this trend towards individuals taking more ownership, like would love to talk to you whether it's to invest or not, because I think that speaking with other people who share our vision of where the world of work is going is incredibly powerful. But ultimately, I think it comes down to all the things that investors are generally looking for, which is, like you said, is this the right team to bring it to life? And our entire team not only has the expertise that we need in each domain, right? Whether it's technology, whether it's growth, whether it's execution, whether it's strategy, but also a very, very deep connection to our customer and the problem that we're solving for them. And we all have our own personal stories, whether being an immigrant and coming over here and making that transition, making a different industry transition. And that insight that we've had into our own personal experiences, but also built up throughout the years that we've been building the Lighthouse, is incredibly valuable. And I think it's the insight that many solutions in space are built by more traditional HR professionals. And I think that our advantage is actually we are a solution that is built by the modern professional for the modern professional. And we think that that is ultimately the path forward in the world, where the world of work is headed. Secondly, I think we've de-risked it. We've de-risked it by, like you're saying, bringing on some of the largest companies in the world to already be paying for the solution as it exists today. And we not only have data on how their employees are benefiting from it, but also the growth that they're seeing on it, to the point where then we've also been able to expand and 4x those accounts after 2 to 4 months of being live with them. So those are kind of the biggest points. And I think, the product that we're building, once we show it to people, like that's when we get the jaw drop moment of like, oh my God, how does this not exist? And I would love to show it to people that are interested in seeing it, because we're just super excited about what we're building and really have already seen the way that it's changed people's lives and changed companies in terms of even how they're engaging and relating to their employees. And so we're really excited for, as we continue to grow and to scale, the impact that this can ultimately have on individuals, on teams, on entire industries, on entire companies, on entire markets. And I think that there's very much an impact to what we're building as well, in addition to a massive market opportunity like you're speaking to.
Nothing else needs to be said. It's a no-brainer. That's why we invested, for goodness sake. It's nothing new. They're just building more of what they've already built. They've already executed. It's a great team being led by Courtney. I couldn't be happier that we've made the investment into them. We're going to support you all the way, Courtney. We've only just begun. And if any investors out there are smart, they will be contacting you. What's your email so they can get in contact?
Courtney at thelighthouse.us.
Beautiful. Easy peasy.
And it's Courtney with a C.
Yes.
Ever since the Kardashians, people now ask me if it's a C or a K. And I'm like, you watch reality TV. I know it.
Too much.
Yeah.
So look, contact Brian here at Expert Dojo if you want to be connected as well. Either way, you will not go far wrong with a meeting to go through what they're doing. Courtney, thanks ever so much. To be continued.
Thank you so much, Brian.